Hey, we're going to talk about the job application process. But before we do that, I want to tell you guys, please do subscribe. I think the link is about right around here, right under this, somewhere over here. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do, and hit that bell so you guys know when our new videos and content are published. Now let's jump right in. So, the job application process. We talk about this a lot on our channel, and we've been covering it recently because it's an important thing to know. A lot of you are coming out of college, or you're in August, you're going into college, maybe in your junior year, maybe your senior year, maybe you're changing industries and trying to get into software development. A lot of you are trying to get into the industry, but you don't exactly know what the process is like, or you're not used to it. Maybe it's been a few years since you've been on the market. So let's talk about how it begins. The first step of the job application process is you are submitting a job application. You're finding the openings on a job on a company's website, a job board, something like Indeed or Monster or Simply Hired, or you're going to the website of a company where they post their jobs, like Google does, like Facebook does, like Microsoft, HP, Apple, all those companies out there, and you're submitting your job application. Usually that submission process includes your resume and possibly a cover letter. So you're writing your resume, and you're hoping that it looks really good, it sounds professional, and then it's going to pique someone's interest. So that's what you're doing at first, and your entire goal during that phase of the process is to move on to your first phone call. So if you don't know what the first two steps really are yet, the first step, you're submitting your application. If you do not submit that application, you don't have a shot. What's there to worry about? Why fear submitting the application? Don't. Just submit that application, put together your resume, don't fear the submission process. No one's going to yell at you if you submit something that's not competitive or if you aren't necessarily their ideal applicant. They're just not going to get back to you. So don't worry about it. Submit your application. That's number one. You have to do that. Number two, you're hoping to get a call back by that company or the recruiting company or the staffing firm that's recruiting for that position. So step one, submit the application. Step two, wait for that contact from the company. And if you receive that contact, make sure you set up that call with them. Normally you'll get an email back saying, hey, we received your application. We'd like to maybe talk to you about the position and see if there's a good fit. Or you're going to get a phone call by a recruiter that's going to say something along the lines of the same thing. They're going to be like, hey, we received your application for this position. Can you tell me a little bit more about your background? Can you tell me what your salary expectations are? Never answer that question if you don't have to. It's a tough one. Sometimes you're going to. Don't beat yourself up about it. Everybody out there is going to tell you you should never give a recruiter your salary expectations up front, ever. So just note that. Next, so you have step one, submit your application. Step two, hopefully get that contact by them. Remember, in that step two, you're hoping to get contacted back based on your job application. A lot of the times you don't hear back at all. That's called getting ghosted. So if you're ghosted, it happens. Don't get kind of bent up about it. Don't feel bad. Everybody gets ghosted if you've been in the industry long enough. Second, you're going to get a call back and maybe it doesn't work out. Maybe you didn't do a good job talking to the recruiter. I've never seen a recruiter call end up in an automatic denial unless they're looking for like a senior or a principal software engineer and you're really junior or entry level, maybe mid-level, and there's no way you'd qualify. Other than that, everybody usually gets through the recruiter call. The next thing that may happen is you may get automatically denied. That's usually an automatic email that's sent to you after somebody on the other side or a machine, a computer program, decides that your resume doesn't qualify based on the descriptions that you've put into it. Okay, so those are all of the steps that you can really expect to happen when you submit an application. Now, the next steps after that the recruiter phone call or the company phone call talking to you about whether or not it's a good fit is an interview with somebody from the engineering team or the hiring manager or somebody that's going to actually get an idea of if you can do the required skills. So we like to call these the technical interviews, and these happen almost all the time. Small companies, middle-sized companies, and large companies usually employ a process where they either give you a programming test online, so they'll give you a link to maybe a HackerRank set of problems. If you don't know what HackerRank is, check it out. It's a platform that tests your ability to write code. Usually it requires you to solve problems that either require some data structure implementation, some algorithms, maybe a little bit of dynamic programming, etc. So you really need to work on those skills. The other type of technical interview you may get is they may send you a project to do for a few days. So they may say, hey, we're really interested in potentially working with you and pushing you along the interview process. But first, here's a programming test for you to do on your own time. So take a week, try to do this as best you can. Here's the prompt, here's the problem statement you need to do, and we're expecting you to get this back to us in 1 week. We'll check in with you along the way. And after you submit it, our engineers will review it, and based on your outcome or what they review, we may move you on to the next steps. I hate those type of interviews. I've done a lot of them over the years. Spending a week doing any of those problems is way too long. There's no guarantee of a next step. Now, some people like the idea of that. It lets them really try out and it lets them take time to solve the problem. Normally those types of projects or interview technicals aren't designed to take you multiple days. Maybe they're supposed to be designed to take you 2 to 4 hours, 4 to 8 hours. But in any case, you're basically going and doing a full day's work at least for this company you don't work for. Now, of course, it's a nice gesture to make. You putting in the extra time to do the work is a great kind of sign that you're interested in doing this type of work and you're interested enough in that company to do it. But to each their own. I don't like doing them anymore. I've done a lot of them and none of those have ever worked out to be a success for me. I do much better. I've seen a lot more success by doing the nice HackerRank links where you go and solve a technical problem and it takes you an hour or two, not a week-long project. So that's the technical aspect. The other type of technical test you may have is what Facebook does, Google does, Amazon, Apple. Normally, after you've talked to the recruiter, if they're going to take you take you on site, they first want to vet your skills with measuring your technical ability, right? So what they'll do is they'll schedule a phone call with you where you're going to share a screen. So it's really a screen sharing meeting with them, and they're going to ask you to code solutions in some sort of text editor. Not a coding editor, not an IDE, not something that has autocomplete like we're all used to doing in the industry. No, they're going to ask you to do it in a notepad or a text editor. Google does it in Google Docs. And then you're going to be expected to be able to write code that can be as close to being compile ready in a notepad with no autocomplete, and you're going to be on a phone expected to be able to talk back and forth with this interviewer who's usually an engineer on the team. So that's really the extent of that technical phone call or the technical interview before you go on site. So let's go over the steps we've talked about so far. The first thing you need to do, you submit your application. 2, you get a recruiter contact. That's an email or a phone call by a recruiter. They're going to tell you what the job is like, what the company is like, what their values are, and then they're going to see what your background is, and you're going to finally decide, is this something that you're interested in? If so, they're going to move you on to the next steps if they think you have a potential fit or can do the interviews. Next step, technical interviews. Those are your phone interviews or video chat or tests. It happens in multiple ways. Now, after you've done the technicals, you're on step number 4. That's an on-site interview. This is where everybody is kind of afraid of the on-site interview, okay? So the on-site interview is scary. The on-site interview, usually they fly you out. The company pays for your flights. They'll put you in a hotel for a night, maybe 2, and then they'll have you come in for a full day of interviews. It'll be anywhere between 4 and 8 hours of your day. Say you'll come in at 10 a.m., you'll have 2 interviews, then you'll have a lunch break where that lunch break is with somebody from the company, but usually companies don't like that to be a part of your interview evaluation. So they tell you ahead of time, the lunch is kind of for you to relax, ask that person questions. They're not a part of your interviewers that are analyzing and evaluating your skills for the job. They're just there to take you out for lunch and hang out with you, so you're not a loner. All right, and then you usually do 3 or 4 more interviews to wrap up the day. Each one of those interviews is nerve-wracking for most people if you're not prepared. because each one of those interviews is 45 minutes, 1 hour, and they're technical. So those are what we usually talk about as being whiteboarding interviews. In most cases, you don't get a computer. Instead, you're in a small room or conference room with another engineer. They'll either bring engineers into that room every hour, or you'll move around to different areas to get to their offices and interview with them. Depends on the company and the schedule that they've given you. But then for each one of those 45-minute or 1 hour sessions, they're technical. They may ask you to write code on a whiteboard. It may be a problem like what you'll see on HackerRank or LeetCode, and you have to be able to write it on a whiteboard. That's nerve-wracking. So you have to prepare for that step. After the on-site, now let me actually continue there. The on-site, each one of those 45-minute or 1 hour interviews will be technical. They will not all be coding. They may be system design. They may be architecture. It may just be a back and forth communication meeting. But most of the time when you go to Google or Amazon or Facebook, they're going to give you at least two to three sessions out of the 4 to 6 that are coding. Or every single session may have a small coding aspect to it, but then they may be higher level, like a system design type discussion. So it really depends on the company and the role you're applying for. All right, so you really need to be prepared for the on-site. Now, it's impressive if you've even got the invite to go on site and do an interview. So if you've got to that point, be proud of yourself. Now, after that, if you've done well enough, there's hopefully the positive feedback you'll receive, usually within a week to 2 weeks, that says, hey, you did great, everybody gave you a great review, and now we're looking to give you an offer. So that's the best outcome you can have. At certain companies like Google, that's a positive thing, that's great, but their process is a little bit more complex. Once you've been approved after doing on-sites, your application and your approvals taken to like a hiring board, and then that has to be evaluated, and then you have to talk to different teams to see who you're going to get on. It's complex. We'll make another video about that, or you guys can check out other people's videos that talk about that. Google itself tells you the process too if you check it out on their website. Most companies, after your on-sites, after that 1 or 2 week little buffer period, they're going to call you and tell you either you've made it, they're going to give you an offer, or unfortunately you didn't do it perfectly, didn't do so hot. They will not give you feedback. Normally companies don't. It's either going to be you didn't do great and sorry, we're not going to extend an offer, or you did awesome, we're going to extend an offer. So we've talked about all of the steps of the interview process here. Job application, you have to submit the application if you even want a shot. If you do not submit it, you're never going to get the job. 2, the recruiter contact, they will call you or email you. 3, the technical phone call, interview / video chat or screen share, that does exist. Some people want to say that does not exist. It does. You will face it one day. The receiving a HackerRank link or some sort of online coding test link, or we're going to give you a project. Wow, I just kind of increased our count there. So that was 3 types of the technical portion after the recruiter call. So that's all a part of point number 3. Okay? So now point number 4, your on-sites. 4, there you go. 4, on-site interviews. If you do well, that leads into number 5. That's either you've received an offer or unfortunately you do not. So that's the entire interview process. That's what you guys need to expect and you guys need to practice for. If you do not know how to practice for the interview process, there's a ton of great resources out there for it. I've got a book that's releasing here in August all about the interview process. There's a whole bunch of other resources out there for you. Definitely look at algorithms books, learn your data structures. Geeks for Geeks is a great website and resource for doing that. Cracking the Coding interview is a great resource for learning about the types of problems that are going to be asked. Check out LeetCode, check out HackerRank. Those are great resources. And then just prepare and practice. The more you practice, the more interviews you do, the more mock interviews you do, the better you're going to get the skills required in the interview process, and the better you're going to get at communicating. Communicating is a huge part of all of the interviews. Everyone's going to expect you to be able to communicate clearly with them, be a social person, but also be technical and concise in the way that you're solving your problems. Confidence only comes with practice and understanding your trade. You probably do, even though you may not know it yet. good luck with your guys' interviews. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments down below, and make sure you subscribe. Have a good one, you guys.